The first red flag wasn't dramatic. There was no lipstick on a collar. No suspicious text lighting up the room at 2 a.m. No anonymous tip from a concerned friend. It was a calendar notification. I was using Sarah's laptop because mine had decided, at the worst possible moment, to install a system update. I run a small auto repair shop, and Fridays are invoice days. Payroll, vendor payments, the unglamorous backbone of keeping the lights on. Her laptop was sitting open on the kitchen island. Screen dimmed but still active. I didn't think twice. We'd never had password barriers between us. At least, I didn't think we did. I opened the browser to log into my accounting software. That's when the notification slid across the top of the screen. Harbor Point Suites, Milwaukee, service department booking confirmed. Tuesday through Thursday. Milwaukee. I stared at it longer than I should have. Because Milwaukee wasn't where she told me she'd be. She'd said Madison. She'd complained about Madison. The Drive. The boring hotel attached to the conference center. The dry corporate vibe. She'd even joked about sneaking out early to come home if it got too tedious. But this wasn't Madison. And this wasn't a hotel conference room block. This was a service department. For 3 days. In Milwaukee. On a weekday. At first, I tried to reason it out. Maybe it was for a colleague. Maybe she booked on behalf of someone else. Maybe the company changed venues last minute. Except she hadn't mentioned any change. And Sarah never forgot to mention changes. She liked control, details, logistics. She was the kind of person who forwarded me flight confirmations even when I didn't ask. So why didn't I know about this? I didn't dig further. I didn't search her email. I didn't scroll through her calendar. I just sat there staring at the screen until it dimmed again. And that's when something uncomfortable stirred in my chest. Not jealousy. Not yet. It was dissonance. The kind that makes you feel like reality just shifted half an inch to the left. She got home around 6:30 that evening. I heard her heels before I saw her. Sharp, confident clicks across the entryway tile. She walked in looking polished. More polished than she'd looked around me in months. New blazer. Tailored. Expensive. Her hair done in that soft, effortless style that actually takes effort. There was a faint scent of perfume I didn't recognize. Something warmer. Richer. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag by the stairs. "Long day." "Yeah," I replied carefully. "Hey." She didn't notice anything off in my tone. Or maybe she did and chose not to. She moved into the kitchen like she owned the space in a different way now. Opened the fridge. Poured sparkling water into a glass. Avoided eye contact without making it obvious. I waited until she turned toward me. "Quick question," I said. She paused. Just slightly. "Yeah?" "I was using your laptop earlier. Needed to print invoices." A flicker. "So?" "I saw a booking confirmation. Harbor Point Suites. Milwaukee." Silence. Then her face changed, not to panic. To irritation. "You were on my laptop?" she asked, eyebrows lifting. "It was open." "That's not the point." I kept my voice calm. "I wasn't snooping." Popped up. She exhaled through her nose. Sharp. "It's for work. I thought your training was in Madison." "It was," she replied immediately. "They changed it." "When?" "I told you." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't." She set her glass down harder than necessary. "Yes, Alex. I did. You probably weren't listening." And there it was. The pivot. Suddenly we weren't talking about Milwaukee anymore. We were talking about me. "You're always distracted lately," she continued. "Either you're at the shop or you're exhausted from the shop. I can't even get through a conversation without you zoning out." I would have remembered a city change. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You can't even remember what we talked about last Sunday." That stung. Because last Sunday I'd worked a double shift fixing a fleet contract issue that, ironically, helped pay for her lifestyle upgrades. I swallowed it. "Why a service department?" I asked. "Why not a hotel like usual?" She laughed. But there was no humor in it. "Because I wanted space. Because corporate hotels are loud. Because I deserve to be comfortable. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I hesitated, because what I meant sounded ridiculous in my own head. I just didn't know about it. She crossed her arms. So now you're interrogating me? I'm asking. You're implying. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You think I'm lying. I blinked. I never said that. You don't have to say it. There was a rhythm to this, one I hadn't noticed before. Every time I pointed at something concrete, she redirected it into something abstract. Trust, tension, jealousy. You've been distant for months, she said, her voice shifting into something softer, almost wounded. And instead of asking why, you're accusing me over a hotel booking. I'm not accusing you. You basically are. I felt my footing slipping. This wasn't about Milwaukee anymore. It was about me being inattentive, controlling, emotionally unavailable. You really need to work on this jealousy thing, she added. It's not attractive. Jealousy. That word lodged in my chest. I hadn't felt jealous. I felt confused. But suddenly I was on defense. I'm not jealous, I said quietly. Then why does it bother you? Because it doesn't add up. Because you didn't tell me. Because something feels off. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said the one thing that still makes me angry when I think about it. Sorry, I just didn't understand. She grabbed her glass. Exactly, and walked upstairs. I stood there in the kitchen long after she disappeared. The house felt different. Same walls, same photos, same dining table we picked out together 8 years ago. But something had shifted. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if it was her behavior that changed, or if I was just now noticing it. That night, she moved around the bedroom differently, collected her toiletries for the trip, checked her phone more often, screen face down. When I climbed into bed, she was already under the covers, scrolling. Early flight, I asked. Yeah. To Milwaukee. She paused. Then, yes, Milwaukee. No hesitation, no correction, just confirmation. And somehow that made it worse. I turned off the light and stared at the ceiling. If it was nothing, why did I feel like I'd just been scolded instead of reassured? Why did I feel smaller? And why did the idea of that service department bother me more than any late night ever could? I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself marriages go through phases. I told myself successful people upgrade things, clothes, hotels, expectations. But deep down, under all the rationalization, a quiet thought surfaced. If it's innocent, why did she need to make me the problem? After the Milwaukee argument, something in me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like a mechanic hearing a faint knock in an engine that everyone else says sounds fine. You don't panic. You don't tear the whole thing apart. You listen. You pay attention. And once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. Over the next few weeks, I started replaying everything. Not just the booking. Everything. Sarah's schedule had become vague. She used to overshare. I'd get full breakdowns of meetings, who annoyed her, who got promoted, who wore what to the quarterly briefing. Now, busy day. Long meeting. Corporate stuff. No details. When I asked follow-ups, she'd sigh like I was interrogating her. Her phone was always face down. Not occasionally. Always. If it buzzed, she'd flip it over so fast it was almost reflex. Sometimes she'd glance at it and smile. Not at me. Then quickly neutralize her expression when she realized I was looking. I told myself it was work stress. Then came the wardrobe shift. Sarah had always dressed well. But suddenly, there were new dresses. Sharper heels. A few pieces that felt younger, edgier. One night she came home with a small shopping bag from a boutique I knew wasn't cheap. Since when do you shop there? I asked casually. She shrugged. Since I can afford it. That stung more than it should have. My auto repair shop isn't glamorous. Grease under fingernails, 6 a.m. Openings, hands that smell like oil no matter how much you scrub. But it pays well. It's stable. It's ours. Except lately, she talked about it like it was something she'd outgrown. At dinner one night, she said, You ever think about expanding? Or maybe franchising? Or doing something bigger? I like what I do, I said. She gave me this look. Not angry, not even disappointed, just unimpressed, as if I'd failed some invisible ambition test. Then there were the salons. Sarah had never been high maintenance, but suddenly there were weekly appointments. Hair gloss, nails, facials, new lingerie too. I noticed because it wasn't for me. And * Macy between us had thinned out like worn brake pads. Gradual, almost unnoticeable at first. She was tired, stressed, not in the mood. Eventually, she moved into the guest bedroom. It's temporary, she said. You snore. I'm exhausted. I do snore, but I'd snored for 10 years. It hadn't been a deal-breaker before. The guest room door started closing at night. Not halfway, fully, locked sometimes. When I asked about that, she said, privacy isn't a crime, Alex. Everything became a philosophy debate instead of a conversation. Privacy, trust, autonomy, big words used to avoid small truths. She stopped coming to shop barbecues, avoided dinners with couples we'd known for years. Once, at a neighborhood party, she spent the whole time on her phone outside. When I asked if she was okay, she said, I just don't connect with these people anymore. These people had been our circle for almost a decade. Felt like she was pre-erasing me from her life, like she was rehearsing detachment. And I kept trying to adjust. Work more, complain less, ask fewer questions. Because every time I did ask something concrete, Milwaukee, late nights, phone habits, she reframed it as insecurity. You're projecting. You're overthinking. You're suffocating me. The word suffocating stuck. I started shrinking myself. Stopped asking about trips. Stopped commenting on new clothes. Stopped noticing when she came home glowing from something that clearly wasn't me. One night, she came back from a team dinner with this energy. Not guilty. Not nervous. Alive. There's no other word for it. Her eyes were bright. Her posture relaxed. She looked seen. Good night, I asked. Productive, she said. Productive. Like that glow was a KPI. That's when I first heard his name. Ethan Brooks. Regional manager. Smart guy, she said one evening while scrolling through her phone. Actually understands strategy. I looked up. Don't most managers? She smirked. Not like him. It wasn't flirty. It was admiring, which somehow felt worse. Over the next few days, his name appeared casually in conversation. Ethan thinks we're restructuring Q3. Ethan had a good point about scaling. Ethan says Milwaukee might open new partnerships. Milwaukee. There it was again. I asked lightly, he going to that training too? Of course, she said. He's leading part of it. My stomach dropped just enough for me to notice. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse her. But I started connecting dots I didn't want to connect. Frequent trips. Upgraded apartments. Sudden ambition talk. Distance from me. And admiration for a man who understood strategy. One evening, I caught her mocking my shop on the phone. I wasn't meant to hear it. I just can't talk about carburetors anymore. She laughed softly. I need bigger conversations. Silence from the other end. Then she said quieter. Yeah, I know. When she hung up, I was standing in the hallway. She froze. How long were you there? She asked. Long enough. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. That word again. Everything I felt became exaggeration. Everything she did became justified evolution. That night, lying alone in our bedroom while she stayed behind her closed guest room door, I finally admitted something to myself. This wasn't random. This wasn't stress. This wasn't midlife restlessness. It felt orchestrated, like she was slowly transferring her loyalty somewhere else while training me to question my own perception. And the worst part? I still didn't have proof. Just patterns. Just instincts. Just that faint knocking sound in the engine. But I knew something else too. Engines don't knock without a reason. And when you ignore it long enough, the damage gets expensive. The invitation came 3 days before Milwaukee. Sarah walked into the kitchen holding her phone, expression carefully neutral. "There's a corporate reception Tuesday night," she said, "at Harbor Point Suites. Leadership, regional managers, networking." Harbor Point Suites. She said it casually, like it meant nothing. My pulse ticked once in my throat. "That's the apartment place?" I asked. "It's attached to the executive wing," she replied smoothly. "Multi-use property. Very standard. Very standard." I nodded slowly. "Spouses invited?" She hesitated. "Barely. Technically, yes. Technically." She hadn't mentioned that before. "You should come," she added, almost as an afterthought. "It'll look good. Look good. Not I want you there. Not it would mean a lot. Just optics." Still, I agreed. Part of me wanted to see it with my own eyes. Part of me wanted to prove to myself I was imagining things. Tuesday came. She dressed differently than usual. Not flashy, controlled. A fitted navy dress that balanced professional and polished. Subtle makeup. Heels I hadn't seen before. She didn't ask how she looked. She checked herself in the mirror, nodded slightly, and grabbed her clutch. The drive to Milwaukee was quiet. Corporate radio silence. When we pulled into Harbor Point Suites, I understood why she'd chosen the word executive. Glass facade, valet, subtle lighting, the kind of place that whispered power instead of shouting wealth. Inside, the reception area hummed with controlled energy. Low jazz, clinking glasses, lanyards and tailored suits. Sarah shifted the moment we stepped through the doors. Her posture straightened, her smile sharpened. It was like watching someone switch into a different version of themselves. "Stay close," she said quietly. "Just don't overthink anything." That phrase again. Don't overthink. We moved through the crowd. She introduced me to people, but vaguely. "This is my husband, Alex. He runs an auto shop." Not the name of it. Not the contracts we manage. Not the growth we'd achieved. Just an auto shop. I smiled anyway, shook hands, observed. And then I saw him. Ethan Brooks. I recognized him instantly, even though I'd only seen his LinkedIn photo once, months ago, when curiosity got the better of me. Tall, controlled, confident in a way that suggested rooms rearranged themselves for him. He was laughing with a small group near the bar. Sarah's eyes found him before I could say anything. It was subtle, but it was there. A spark. Not surprise. Recognition. She touched my arm lightly. "That's Ethan." Of course it was. He looked over. Their eyes locked, and something passed between them. Not shock. Not awkwardness. Ease. The kind of ease that only exists when two people share context. He approached. "Sarah," he said warmly. Then he glanced at me. "You must be Alex." His handshake was firm, measured. "Good to finally meet you," he added. Finally, like I'd been a topic before. "Likewise," I replied. He and Sarah fell into rhythm instantly. Inside jokes disguised as professional shorthand. Synchronized laughter. Mirrored gestures. When he leaned in slightly to hear her over the music, she didn't lean away. She leaned closer. Not inappropriately, but comfortably. Too comfortably. At one point, he placed his hand lightly at the small of her back to guide her through the crowd. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. But it wasn't accidental. And it wasn't new. I've spent my life reading body language. Customers lie about car damage all the time. You learn to see microreactions. What I was seeing wasn't flirtation. It was familiarity. History. They knew each other's space. They anticipated each other's movements. When she laughed, she touched his forearm. When he spoke, she angled her body toward him. Not toward me. And the worst part? Neither of them seemed nervous about me being there. That told me everything. If it were new, there would have been tension. If it were impulsive, there would have been caution. This felt established. Practiced. I stepped back gradually, pretending to take a call. From a distance, it became even clearer. They stood close, shoulders nearly brushing. He lowered his voice. She tilted her head. He said something that made her exhale through her nose. A private reaction. That wasn't corporate synergy. That was int asterisk Macy built over time. My chest didn't explode. It went cold. The realization settled like frost. This wasn't about a single apartment booking. This wasn't about loneliness. This wasn't about a midlife ego boost. This was layered, strategic, deliberate. At one point, Ethan raised his glass and said, "To expansion." Sarah clinked his glass lightly. "To the future." The future. She didn't look at me when she said it. And suddenly everything made sense. The wardrobe upgrades, the ambition talk, the subtle mocking of my business, the detachment from our shared circle. She wasn't just drifting. She was repositioning, aligning upward, and I was becoming obsolete inventory. After another 20 minutes of watching them operate like a well-rehearsed duo, I made a decision. I walked over. "Hey," I said lightly, "I'm going to head out early. Long drive back." Sarah blinked. Already, there it was, slight disruption in her rhythm. "Yeah," I replied. "You've got networking." Ethan gave a polite nod. Drive safe. Drive safe." Like I was a background character exiting stage left. Sarah hesitated just long enough to confirm what I already knew. Then she said, "I'll Uber back later." Of course she would. I left without another word. The cold Milwaukee air hit my face as I stepped outside. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't confused. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't questioning my own perception. I was certain. That wasn't the beginning of something between them. It was the middle. And if that was the middle, then there was a beginning I hadn't seen. And an end she was planning without me. When I got home, I didn't pace. I didn't rage. I opened the family tablet that synced shared backups. And that's when I found something that made the affair look like a footnote. Folder. Archived. Labeled in clean, deliberate text. Operation Divorce Alex. The folder didn't jump out at first. It was buried inside archived chat backups on the shared family tablet, the one we used for streaming and grocery lists. I wasn't even searching for something dramatic. I just wanted confirmation, dates, overlap, something clean and factual. Instead, I found a thread title that made my vision narrow. Operation Divorce Alex. All caps. Deliberate. Not emotional. Strategic. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. They felt steady. Too steady. I opened it. The chat was between Sarah and Ethan. Not work emails. Not corporate Slack. A private messaging app that synced across devices when backup settings were active. She must have forgotten to disable the tablet sync. The earliest message was from 6 months ago. 6 months. Before Milwaukee. Before the wardrobe shift. Before the guest bedroom. "Ethan, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. No mess." "Sarah, I know. I don't want drama. I want clean. Clean. Like I was a stain." Scrolling felt mechanical. Like reading instructions for dismantling something I'd built. They discussed timing. Waiting until certain contracts renewed. Monitoring business valuations. Emotional documentation. That phrase stopped me. "Sarah, he's been stressed lately. I've started noting mood swings. Just in case." Mood swings. I work 12-hour days. I deal with customers who blame mechanics for physics. Of course I get tired. But she was documenting it. Framing it. Ethan responded, "Good. Keep it subtle. You don't want it to look manufactured." Manufactured. I scrolled further. There were bullet point lists. Separate bedroom narrative. Sleep issues plus emotional distance. Gradual social detachment from his circle. Position him as volatile under pressure. Build case for business asset division. Business asset division. My shop. The shop I started at 23 with a borrowed lift and 2 used tool chests. The shop that now held service contracts, including one with a logistics company that, according to another message, was indirectly tied to Ethan's region. Then I saw something that made my throat tighten. "Sarah, if I play this right, I can argue for partial ownership. He won't see it coming. Ethan, he doesn't strike me as litigious. Sarah, he's predictable. Predictable. 10 years of marriage reduced to an assessment. Another message. We wait until Q4. Let expansion narrative peak. Then file. He'll be blindsided and defensive, easier to control outcome. Blindsided. Defensive. Easier to control. The affair wasn't the center of this. It was leverage. A stepping stone. A transition plan. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't betrayal born from loneliness. This was restructuring. And I was the expendable department. There were references to Milwaukee not as romance but as logistics. Service department gives privacy and documentation cover. Documentation cover. She wasn't hiding recklessly. She was layering alibis. The more I read, the clearer it became. They weren't just building a relationship. They were building a case. Against me. One message chilled me in a way anger couldn't. Sarah. He still thinks I'm insecure about his shop. That helps. He doesn't realize I've already stepped beyond it. Stepped beyond it. Not outgrown. Stepped beyond. Like I was terrain. Another entry. Once assets are split, we reposition publicly. Gradual reveal. No overlap timeline. No overlap timeline. They were planning optics months in advance. I kept scrolling. There were budget projections. Speculation about my business valuation. Even suggestions that I might overreact if confronted publicly. Something they could use. That's when something shifted in me. Not rage. Clarity. If this was a game, I finally understood the board. They believed I was predictable. Non-confrontational. Emotionally reactive under pressure. So I did the opposite. I documented everything. *TS. Backups. Exported threads. Saved timestamps. Then I closed the tablet and went to bed in our empty master bedroom. When Sarah came home after midnight, she moved quietly. She didn't check on me. She didn't explain the Uber receipt that would show up tomorrow. She assumed the plan was progressing. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing had changed. "Long night?" she asked lightly. "Productive," I replied. She smiled faintly, missing the shift in tone. For the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. I spent the day at the shop reviewing financial records, contracts, partnerships, ownership structures, and that's when something interesting surfaced. One of our largest service contracts, the Logistics Fleet Maintenance Agreement, had recently expanded under a regional restructuring initiative. Signed off by a regional manager, Ethan Brooks. My chest tightened. I pulled the digital paperwork. There were consulting addendums attached, advisory fees routed through a shell consulting firm. The firm's name looked generic, but the banking trail? It led to an account partially authorized by Ethan's division. I sat back slowly. This wasn't just personal. This was financial entanglement. If they were positioning for divorce and asset division while simultaneously leveraging my business contracts, then the affair was the smallest violation in the room. That afternoon, I booked a meeting with a forensic financial analyst. Quietly, privately. I didn't confront Sarah. I didn't withdraw affection. I didn't tip the board. I came home calm. She was in the kitchen scrolling her phone. "How was your day?" she asked without looking up. "Insightful," I replied. She didn't notice the weight of that word. That night, as she closed the guest bedroom door behind her, I understood something clearly. She thought she was 3 moves ahead. She thought I was the predictable variable. But she underestimated something fundamental. I fix systems for a living. And when a system shows corruption, you don't panic. You isolate the failure points, and then you remove them. The folder name echoed in my mind as I drifted to sleep. Operation Divorce Alex. They thought it was a blueprint. They didn't realize it was evidence. The hardest part wasn't confronting her. It was pretending I didn't know. For 3 days after finding the folder, I played the version of myself she expected. Calm, slightly distracted, predictable. She kept moving forward with her routine like a project manager hitting milestones. Guest bedroom, polite distance, occasional subtle jabs about growth and ambition, and I let her. Meanwhile, I was building my own file. The forensic analyst, A quiet woman named Dana met me after hours in a rented office space downtown. I brought copies of the contract documents, the consulting addendums, and the exported chat logs. She skimmed silently for 10 minutes. Then she looked up at me and said, "This isn't just divorce planning." I figured. She tapped the consulting firm name. "These advisory fees are structured to look legitimate, but the payment routing suggests self-dealing. If this regional manager is influencing service contracts that benefit his own shell entity, that's a serious compliance issue." How serious? Career-ending serious. I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction. Not yet. Leverage. Ethan's professional success depended on expansion contracts. My shop handled maintenance for fleets that were part of that expansion. If I withdrew cooperation and flagged irregularities, the chain reaction would be immediate. Dana leaned back. "You need to secure your own position first. Separate accounts. Asset protection. Retain counsel before you make any move." Already scheduled. That night, I met with a lawyer who specialized in high-conflict asset division. I handed him everything, the chat screensh *TS, the financial connections, the operational plan they drafted. He read quietly. Then he smiled slightly. "They documented intent. That's rare." Meaning you're not reacting to infidelity. You're responding to a coordinated attempt at financial manipulation. Hearing it phrased that way removed the last thread of doubt. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about containment. Over the next week, I moved deliberately. I restructured the business ownership from joint marital assumption to a protected operational entity under advice of counsel. Perfectly legal. Clean. Documented. I opened new accounts. Transferred authorized access. Secured digital backups offsite. And at home, I remained calm. Sarah started acting almost lighter. She must have sensed that the tension she'd engineered was working, that I was shrinking into resignation. One night she said, "You've been quiet lately." "Busy," I replied. She studied me for a second, maybe looking for cracks. Then she nodded and returned to her phone. I wondered if Ethan knew how close his timeline was to collapsing. The final piece came when Dana called. "I traced the consulting entity further," she said. "It's not just advisory fees. There are reimbursement irregularities tied to hospitality properties, including Harbor Point Suites. The service department." "Are you saying?" "I'm saying there's a pattern of expense layering that doesn't align with corporate policy. So the location wasn't just convenient. It was part of the financial structure." I sat in my office at the shop and stared at the wall for a long minute. They hadn't just underestimated me. They'd grown careless. That Friday, I initiated the first visible move. I formally terminated the fleet service contract tied to Ethan's regional division. On paper, it was simple: restructuring alignment and independent reevaluation of service providers. In reality, it pulled a keystone from his expansion metrics. Within hours, I received a call from a corporate compliance officer asking for clarification. I provided documentation, carefully, without emotion. I mentioned irregular advisory fees. I forwarded select excerpts of the consulting paperwork. Nothing about the affair. Nothing personal. Just business. By Monday morning, I could feel the ripple. Sarah came home earlier than usual. Her face was tight. "What did you do?" she asked the second she stepped into the kitchen. I looked up calmly. "About what?" "Ethan called me. His division is under audit. Contracts are being reviewed. Someone flagged consulting discrepancies." I held her gaze. "That sounds serious." Her jaw tightened. "You knew." "I know a lot of things." Silence filled the space between us. For the first time in months, she looked uncertain. "Alex," she said carefully, "if this is about Milwaukee." "It's not." I stood slowly. "It's about financial ethics and documentation." Her eyes flickered. She understood. Maybe not everything, but enough. "You went through my files," she said. "You left them accessible. That was private. So was my business." The room felt smaller. She inhaled sharply. "You don't understand how corporate structures work." I almost laughed. I understand contracts, I said. And I understand when someone positions me as predictable. Her face drained of color. You read it. Yes. We stood there. No raised voices, no drama. Just exposed strategy. You weren't supposed to see that, she whispered. That's the problem. For a moment, something like fear crossed her face. Not about the marriage. About control slipping. You could ruin everything, she said quietly. I'm protecting what's mine. That night, she didn't retreat to the guest bedroom immediately. She sat on the couch, staring at nothing. I didn't gloat. I didn't escalate. I simply existed without shrinking. The next week unfolded quickly. Corporate leadership initiated formal inquiry into Ethan's consulting channels. He stopped coming to Milwaukee. Sarah's tone at home shifted from confident to cautious. One evening, she asked, "What do you want?" The question was almost sincere. "I want clean," I said. Her own word. The irony didn't need highlighting. "Then let's handle this privately," she said. No scorched earth. I studied her for a long moment. "You wrote a plan called Operation Divorce Alex." Her eyes closed briefly. "You weren't planning private." That landed. The following morning I filed first. Not emotionally. Procedurally. Full documentation attached. Asset protection already in place. By the time formal notices reached her legal counsel, Ethan's audit had escalated beyond internal review. He called once. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Control had shifted. Not because I retaliated emotionally, but because I refused to play the role they assigned me. Predictable, defensive, volatile. Instead, I became methodical, and methodical wins long games. When Sarah finally stood in the kitchen days later holding the official filing papers, her hands trembled slightly. "You beat me to it," she said. "No," I replied calmly. "I corrected the timeline." She looked at me differently then. Not with affection. Not even with anger. With recognition. The version of me she underestimated was gone. And the version standing in front of her wasn't predictable anymore. Ethan's audit didn't stay quiet. Within 2 weeks, his consulting structure became a formal investigation. Contracts were frozen. Expansion paused. His name disappeared from internal announcements. Sarah was called into HR twice. She came home pale the second time. "They're asking about Milwaukee," she said. "Answer honestly," I replied. She stared at me. "You did this." "No," I said calmly. "Your documentation did." Her job unraveled fast. Restructuring, they called it. Reputation in corporate circles moves like oil on water. Thin, fast, impossible to gather back. When the divorce hearing began, I wasn't defensive. I was prepared. Evidence neutralized every narrative she'd drafted. She didn't lose everything, but she lost control. And that was the part she never planned for. The divorce finalized in under 6 months. Clean, just like she wanted. Except clean meant I kept my business intact, my contract secure, my name untouched. Ethan quietly exited the industry. No scandal headlines, just absence. Sarah moved to another city. We haven't spoken since. Sometimes I still think about that folder name, Operation Divorce Alex. I almost thank her for it. Without it, I might have reacted emotionally instead of strategically. The shop expanded the following year. 2 new lifts, 3 more employees, new fleet contracts, none tied to anyone who sees people as leverage. I kept a copy of that chat thread. Not out of anger. As a reminder, never ignore the knock in the engine, and never let someone mistake your silence for weakness.